Hey, afternoon, everybody. My name's Dave Mitchell. I'm on the threat intel team over here at Infoblox. I'm a recovering operator, did about 20 years at telcos and web properties, and then got into vendor land a little over 10 years ago to try to build products and tech that I wished I would have had when I was an operator. So why DNS? So I like to joke, there's so much room for activities. You know, some rough math just with DNS namespace, just with a domain and a TLD. It's 92 orders of magnitude larger than all of the IPv4 space in the world. So you can pretty much do whatever you want. There's close to 1,300 top-level domains at this point. Mix and match, it's nearly infinite namespace, and the attackers have more than likely figured a lot of these tricks out, and they're getting better on a daily basis. But on the counterpoint of that is DNS can actually block that in a very efficient mechanism, along with your entire suite of security stack. Again, Kesh already talked about this. We do DNS all day, every day. Our team is fairly large. We even have software developers. So we've got 12 or 13 actual researchers across the globe, and a large team building these actual algorithms that actually get fed into the product. And really all we do is stare at DNS all day. Mukesh already touched on this when it comes to timelines, but the long and short of it is, around 2018, 2019, when Renee came on board, she realized we needed a new approach to how we were tackling the DNS problem. It's not repackaging or curating other data sets. Those are good, but as a vendor, you don't want to necessarily cause a false positive with your product because you're packaging in other data. So we took her expertise. I've only been here about a year and a half, and merged all that together into what we feed into threat defense across the board. Just some of our threat actors, and they're named after based on what they do. Vipers are malicious ad tech, and then Hawks are DNS hijacking. There's a bunch of different ones. Decoy Dog was a fun one that before I even started working at Infoblox, I was working with Renee on that through the security industry. We had both found it at nearly the same time. People were like, will you two please start working together because you're driving us both crazy. That's actually a fun one. We still believe it's a nation state. We just don't know which one. Very well done when it comes to DNS command and control. So getting to work with Renee and the team is really great. I think we're up to 7, maybe 8 countries with researchers in it now. We just brought in a organized crime expert in Southeast Asia, who we just brought over from the United Nations. So we're going to really start focusing on that part of the world as well. So just a little bit on why Intel is unique. Again, we're not repackaging any of the intelligence that we have in there. It's all original intelligence that we're creating from raw data sets and correlation together. And this is just from the lookalikes. And as some of the questions I heard before, heard vendor A say they do DNS. Okay, well again, it's really what you're the best at. Are we building next-gen firewalls? Absolutely not. This is our bread and butter, and this is why we're able to really beat all of the other vendors that are out there that are saying they're doing DNS. They're obviously doing great work with what they do, with what their main products are, but DNS is our main product, and that's why we're able to really beat everybody across the board. And this is just lookalikes, which I'll touch on later. It's a fun problem that everyone has to deal with. So again, DNS is used at some point across the attack chain, whether it's beginning communication in C2 or exfil at the end. So even if you actually missed it at the beginning, say somebody took their corporate laptop home, wasn't necessarily on the network, got infected with something, well, they bring it back on the network. We're going to detect it going out to command and control, essentially make the malware inert, and along with exfil at the end. So at some point, with the exception of very small niche nation states that know that they can pivot to direct IP, and that's where we cover it on the firewalls that way, everything uses DNS at least once.
And even they use DNS once until they realize.
Exactly. Just some light numbers. About 12 million active indicators. And this was over the last 90 days. And we call it protection before impact. We were doing around 75, 76% of the domains that were in there. We already had in the feed before we saw a single customer actually make a DNS query towards it. And that's how we're able to get to those 60+ day numbers of having it in there. And that's really because we're watching the infrastructure as it's being built, right? These guys can't go launch these attacks without staging a large amount of data. I mean, even just the US Postal Service scams are using tens of thousands of domains. That takes time, DevOps expertise, and all of that to really roll out. But we can watch that in real time because DNS is a nice open ledger that allows us to see what everyone's doing. So our reputation process is very simple. It's just like a stoplight. You know, domain comes in right off the bat, it's unclassified. So we've got algorithms running 24 hours a day. It'll pick that new domain up that just showed up and start running it through and go, okay, well, it either matched all of these particular attributes, and we'll use statistics to start clustering them together. So it might be based on how the name actually looks, how it's being registered, time windows, things like that. And then we'll start clustering those together, and then that'll pop out into an unnamed actor that we're going to track. And then that's where our researchers will kind of dig in and go, okay, let's, you know, that's 40,000 domains. What's actually going on there? That's when we dig in and find out what they're actually doing. And then that's when we build these signatures, and that's how they become tracked threat actors. And then it's easy enough. These algorithms keep running, and okay, they modify one little thing. They think they're going to throw us off. Well, the algorithms pick that up, and then we start clustering more in. So we're able to track a wide variety of things in real time, just using, you know, big data mechanisms, but we're just pulling in raw data sets from all over in order to do that. But the one thing we always, you know, Renee loves to say, it's a really low regret way to protect your network, right? Any of these suspicious feeds, if we think they're suspicious, there's probably absolutely no reason anybody on your network should be going to them in the first place. If somebody gets blocked by it, maybe 1 out of every 10 million times, it might be this random new website that somebody wanted to go to download a meme. 99.9% of the time, they're not going to be places you want to go to. And a large variety of these suspicious ones will actually get promoted to malicious after we've gathered more data as we start tracking them. And in the rare event, you know, say somebody's website gets compromised to their domain and we move them to malicious, well, as we notice that, okay, well, they realize they got hacked, that they've cleaned it up, then it can kind of roll back into benign. So these are just some of the attributes. There's many, many more that we keep adding, and we're always looking for new data sets to keep enhancing these algorithms, you know, further up the stack as well. But, you know, just think about if somebody registered 5,000 domains with GoDaddy in a time window, those might be related, even with the privacy protection, how the domains are, where are they being hosted for authoritative name server? Are the authoritative name servers moving around? That's usually pretty suspect. Are the A records actually moving around across countries? All of these different things come into play. So luckily, again, because it's an open ledger, we're able to track all of these things with our algorithms and be able to do it that way. This is probably pretty much the same slide. It's just, you know, statistics to start. Then from statistics, we go into signatures in order to keep enhancing these algorithms. Statistics are a big part of it. We've got a couple of statisticians on the team, and my boss is a mathematician, so she makes me feel dumb on a daily basis. But it's quite fun to be able to have this many people in a threat intel organization who really know DNS as well. It's hard to find people who can spell DNS, let alone live and breathe it every day. So it's quite a lot of fun. So I wish I had 2 hours just for this. The threat landscape is, who was talking about dumpster fires earlier? It's a dumpster fire, and it's not getting any better. But DNS can actually take a big chunk out of all of that. Before it gets to your firewalls, before it gets to your EDRs, blocking it at DNS is a big deal. Now, command and control, we've been hearing this for a long time, right? You know, malware has to die aloud somewhere. I remember, you know, years ago with, you know, FireEye and things like that were coming out in the early 2000s, you know, being able to track C2s based on IP. Well, obviously all that has morphed and changed. That's really hard to do at a pure packet level in the data plane, right? You've got to look at every single connection and all of that, and that's really hard. It's expensive, it's exhaustive on the equipment, but doing it in DNS, really pretty easy. So being able to track it, these are just, you know, days from compromise, but you can see right there, right at, you know, day 0, day 1, you can actually block it with DNS before they start becoming chatty. This would obviously be quite helpful for, you know, anti-ransomware in general. A lot of the ABTs are very good at DNS these days, even if they have to pivot to an IP at some point. They've got really large infrastructure set up when it comes to C2 with DNS.
You bring up an interesting point. FireEye, you know, one of the use cases there was the beaconing report, right?
Mm-hmm.
Have your SecOps open a beaconing report every morning.
Yeah.
Run things down. What would be the equivalent if someone was to replace like FireEye with Infoblox? What would be the equivalent of that?
We've got a beaconing report in there too. Is anything beaconing out based on, you know, we know that this is actually a command and control cluster. how often it's chatting, so on and so forth. So very similar, but we don't have to be in the data path, and we don't need to have a port mirror in order to do it.
Love it.
So this is, a pretty unique way for DNS command and control that I'm going to get into malicious advertising tech here shortly, that threat actors are using. So in this instance, they're compromising tens or hundreds of thousands of WordPress sites, and they're injecting small bits of code at the top that are hidden. And if you come in and it looks at, you're coming from, a hotel or your cell phone or wherever, it knows where you're coming from, it knows your user agent. It will actually then do a DNS query to a domain that they own on the back end, but it'll be a DNS text record lookup for that actual domain. And what will get handed back to them is a base 64 encoded message that front end WordPress site will then decode, and it's actually a URL, and it'll hand it back to you as a client in a redirect and move you that way. So that's how they've been able to really mask a lot of their command and control, by actually hiding it in the compromised website as opposed to waiting, for the actual backend. Pretty unique way of doing it. We've been tracking this. We've done what we call industry hugs, where we reach out to folks and try to get some extra collection of data out there, and then also shut them down and then watch how they pivot. So we've been really working on one of these threat actors that we call Vextrio. I would say pretty much 7 days a week for the last 13 months. We've been tracking these guys, and we've made a lot of headway, which I'll get into. So malicious ad tech. Again, I started working on this probably 3 or 4 months after getting here. I also kind of thought, like, advertising sounds like a nuisance, kind of boring. Took me about 30 minutes to realize this is a great way to deliver threats, and not to mention print money for the threat actors. So we already saw a little bit, Mukesh said, when it comes to legitimate ad tech, it's pretty simple. Ad tech powers the internet. You guys can already tell how much money it makes. That's why we get to use a lot of the stuff out there for free. We just have to sacrifice our souls and our marketing to be able to do it. But it's pretty simple. It's an A/B. If you've got 2 different marketing campaigns out there based on who's coming from where, you want to serve them one or the other, you can do that. And that's what really came out with what's called a traffic distribution system. It's just intelligent routing at the application layer. So the threat actors, really started getting into this around 2014, 2015, and they've been really perfecting it ever since. The only real difference is this affiliate network advertising called CPAs, click per action or cost per action affiliates. And when you look at I had a slide in our Black Hat deck of just the sheer number of companies that are involved in advertising tech. I mean, thousands. It's pretty easy to hide in there and be a malicious entity and be able to do this. So what these cost per action affiliates do is they'll recruit you. You probably have gotten, if you're on Instagram or anything like that, hey, you can do some advertising, make some money. Well, generally you're doing that, and they're giving you these things called smart links to go put on whatever website you have to generate traffic. You don't know where the traffic goes. You're just doing it. And so that's where this cloaked stuff is, whereas, with Google AdSense, you know where the traffic is going to go, right? It's going to United Airlines or Marriott Hotels or wherever who's paying for an ad. Malicious advertisers can pay these CPA affiliates in order to do that. And so based on the traffic profile coming in, you can get redirected. And this is why it's been really difficult for threat researchers, is if you try to hit one of these URLs more than once in 24 hours, or you don't have the attributes that they want, you go to a decoy like Alibaba, Google, Bing, you name it, and you can go all over URL scan all day long, and you'll see these really bizarre looking URLs, and they'll end up at Google. Those are decoys. And if you actually match the right thing, depending on how you're bouncing around, you might actually get a malicious advertisement. Those can be scams. Those can be disinformation campaigns. Those can be info stealers, fake browser updates, you name it. Well, this is like what we call our little Plinko diagram here. And this is where the cloaking is a big deal for these guys. It's hire enough affiliates to push these advertisements out there and get people infected. And then you also have affiliates that are other threat actors. So they're just kind of the middleman. And that's where we've been really trying to push this message that malicious ad tech is a real big problem that needs to be taken into account at a regulatory level, because these CPA companies, these ad tech companies, are playing I don't know who's really on my network. So their know your customer rules are really pretty weak. They're trying to catch up, but there's hundreds of these guys out there. And so they just play dumb of, I didn't know that affiliate was, sock Golish, which is pushing info stealers all day long. So there's a lot of, shell game going on, but we've built many algorithms to be able to track these. I would say in general, we see malicious ad tech in close to 65 to 70% of our customers, including our own network. You can, particular keywords, if you search in Google, the top 3 results will actually be smart links that'll take you into a traffic distribution system. I'll show you some slides here. I'm sure everyone has visited one, whether you knew it was or not. Yep. Back one. Already kind of touched on this. The enterprise threats, and this is where, in general, there's been confusion. Are these just scams? Trying to target my mom or my grandma, things like that. Absolutely, there's a big risk to consumers. They make a fortune ripping off people this way, but the threats to the enterprise are there. If I'm a malicious threat actor, and I know that I can place an advertisement with these particular, ad tech firms, and push an info stealer, I'm going to do that because I know every company in here has email security that works quite well. The endpoints are hardened, you name it. Now this is a new way to get pieces of software onto people's machines. And there's a lot of good links in here that we can send out, but it's pretty pervasive across the board. Here's just some fun with cloaking. We love our little robots. Those are associated with one of our threat actors called Vex Trio. As you can see right here, this starts off with a Twitter shortener link. And then because we actually match the criteria to get in there, you can start seeing these 307s and 302 redirects. The largest chain I've ever seen was 57 HTTP redirects. And you can imagine on each one of those, ads are being displayed. So all the way across the board. And sometimes these companies are actually the advertiser, the publisher, and the affiliate. So they might be getting paid in 3 different locations. And then you end up at this, strange domain. You get some scams there. There was a really, really large, what we call doppelganger. That was a Russian organization pushing disinformation, over the last, 5 to 8 years. And they were using these traffic distribution systems in order to do it.
Here's a question for you.
Yeah.
Is there any legitimate website that's a .top? They almost always seem to be this type of crap.
I'm sure there are 1 or 2, but I can't name one off the top of my head. You guys know of any? No, but there are, and that definitely comes into play too with the different registries, which TLDs are the most abused.
Yeah.
And there's some, like XYZ registry is heavily abused. They're really great to work with. And then there's others that, you don't hear from. So it kind of, when you look at, I think there's nearly 1,300 TLDs. If one starts getting, too, tackled by the threat actors, then they'll move to one that's, a little less, quiet. Again, so you can kind of see here, this is just some JavaScript showing you what you have to match in there in order to get to the URL. And then they've got these anti-bot systems. A lot of this technology that we've seen, they would be able to sell to real e-commerce sites and make good money doing it. They just sell it to their own e-commerce sites in order to do it that way. And then they don't have to pay taxes and things like that. Here's, a few more. This was one of our slides at Black Hat. Our robot is really great because it pretends it's a CAPTCHA, but you're enabling notifications in your browser. And then that's when you start getting push ads. Renee took her mom's old Android phone and we infected it with this stuff. And it took a 4.5-hour battery life and put it down to 40 minutes. It was just every 10 seconds. And each one of those ads that's popping up, somebody's getting paid, even if you're not clicking on them. So that's how they're doing it, is they're pushing these ads to you so you're seeing them. So that's still an ad impression. People get paid. The Bitcoin, the crypto scams are plentiful with this. Ones that we were really surprised to see were these dating scams. And how profitable they actually are. I mean, there are hundreds, if not thousands of them. They'll even camp on real domains. One's called Cinder instead of Tinder. And they've got all sorts of different things. And people don't know that these are all just chatbots behind the scenes. You have to read really, really far into the T's and C's that says this is for entertainment purposes only. But people will pay $9.95 to sign up for these things. And then it's really difficult to get it to stop recurring charge on your card. And, they're like, well, and then because you've given them your email address, now they believe that you've signed up to be spammed all at the same time. So these guys have really, really gotten good at this. DevOps shops, you can just look in passive DNS and see that they're using every sort of DevOps tech that we use. And they're quite good at it. And this is where the malware pieces, these are, really dangerous affiliates that are using these advertising platforms. These are the fake updates like from Sokolish and things like that. Info stealers. The McAfee one's great. So the fake AV stuff will pop up. And it actually looks pretty good. Like if you didn't know it was in your browser, you might, I joked with my mom, if your computer says you have a virus, you don't, please don't click on it. And when you click all the way through, it will take you to McAfee. And you can buy real McAfee. And then if you do complete the purchase with McAfee for $49.99, these guys make $170 on the deal. Yeah. I don't understand how that math works, but it does. So Vex Trio, and we've got a 3-part series with blogs. We've been tracking these guys. One of our guys on the team had been starting since 2022. We could not figure out who they were. We thought they were advertising on the dark web. We dug around. We found one of our friends found a frame in a YouTube video that was in Russian with a guy demonstrating a new ad affiliate platform that everybody should do. And we saw the URL structure was the exact one that we've been tracking for a long time. One frame and one video led us to this place called Los Pollos. And if anybody likes Breaking Bad, Los Pollos Hermanos. And they also have a push notification one called Taco Loco. They're based in Switzerland and Eastern Europe. I'm pretty sure they've never had a good taco in their life, but they love Breaking Bad. And it's been a lot of fun, tracking these guys. Really, I mean, we're impressed with how good they are. They're able to pivot. They've got, I think we were tracking over 90 different shell companies that they could move things around with. Wow. The minute one starts getting heat, they've changed the name. This was originally Ads Pro. And then it became Los Pollos, and now, depending on how much heat we put on them, we'll see what it gets renamed to next. And this is just one of many. Now, the interesting part is this is a cartel we're taking down. Now we're going to watch which of the other ones pick up the slack because these guys were making so much money. Well, all right, customer base, come on over here. And, these TDSs are also being used for these phishing and MFA attacks. These are really bad at this point. They're getting people with just exhaustion, not paying attention. Some of these, free places where you can host websites, sometimes 90% of the sites that are up there are all phishing. They've gotten quite good with the phishing kits as a service, but now you can advertise them across the TDS, click on it. Oh, well, looks like my Office 365 login. I should totally try that. So hopefully people identify those, but as we know, people do like to click on things. And then just the last one I want to touch on is, just lookalikes. These are fun because it hits everybody. We used to say back in the day when it was only, 5 top-level domains, buy everything that looks like your company, right? Well, you've got 1,300 top-level domains. Not as easy anymore. So this is where protective DNS is really critical to kind of come in and do that. We already know what all of the different things with lookalikes, even just, they can look at fonts and see that they can take an R and an N, and it'll look like an M. I saw one that looked like Microsoft the other day, and if you couldn't see it very well, you might think it looked like Microsoft. So they've tried every different thing, and they're really great at it when it comes to full automation. But these are just some of the ones that we've caught. Some of these you would think people wouldn't click on, but it's as things are flying across too, and that's where the traffic distribution systems can come into play. You might only see it for a minute, but you got O's or zeros instead of O's, and even some of the different fonts and things like that are always kind of fun. So these are a big problem. They affect everyone. So that's why having protective DNS platform in play to at least alert you to the fact, since you can't go out there and proactively buy every one of these domains, it would cost you tens of millions of dollars. At least when somebody is going to pop up and start using it, and then you can go at least get that domain taken down, and we've got a service to do that as well. And with that, feel free to ping us on Mastodon or whatever else, but we've got a bunch of fun research up there, and be happy to work with anybody. If you guys got any fun stuff to throw our way, we'd love to dig into it.